was the violent one, more so than he, I think. With the show!
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it's the Hake Report. The Hake Report. La la la. Oh, it's the Hake Report. The Hake Report. La la la.
Hey guys!
Oh, it's the Hake Report. The Hake Report. La la la. Oh, it's the Hake Report. The Hake Report. La la la.
So, how are you guys doing? I am fine. You can call in 888-775-3773. That's right, I am on JLP's network. Shout out to JLP. It's Wednesday. We have a Bond Archive Sunday service. Quick announcements, guys. Premiere at 4 p.m. Pacific time here, 7 Eastern. The George Zimmerman case was not about race. That's the line for the, that's the title of the church service from 2013. You can check that out on Bond Rebuilding the Man YouTube. I'm going to be on Modern Day Debate, though, on versus Hunter Avalone, talking about gay adoption. That's going to be at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time here in Los Angeles, 7:30 Eastern. So thehakereport.com/appearances. We are about to bring on TJump, my guest. We're going to be talking about racism. Is it real? How real is it? How useful is the term that gets, it's kind of a slur, right? Gets thrown around. Let me know when we have him ready. We just have to get some things ironed out on our end. But before I get to TJump, let me quickly talk briefly with Kathy in California. She's on the line and wants to share a little tip before we get started here. Speaking of racism, Kathy in California, how are you doing?
Good morning, James. I'm very well. How are you?
Doing fine, thank you.
Yeah, so the reason why I'm calling is to talk about two amazing men. One of them is John J. Brendaman. He is running for United States Senate, and I'm hoping that your California listeners will vote for him.
That's the Modesto Straight Pride coordinator. Straight
Correct,
Pride rally.
correct.
Nice. Right on.
Yes.
And we protested with him a few years in a row now, outside of the Planned Parenthood up there, the abortion bill.
And I was there at the last one. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great. It was nice meeting you and Jesse. It was so great because we could just hang out all day and fight for what is right.
Yeah.
Saving the baby.
Right on.
Okay. Yeah. And I just did a demonstration with him this past Sunday about the mask mandates and against COVID mandates. That was pretty good too.
Oh, cool. Nice. Right on.
And another person I would like to share is Sheriff Joe Arpaio. He is now running for mayor of Fountain Hills, Arizona. Another great man.
Nice. That is a personal hero of mine, a living hero. Sheriff Joe Arpaio he was sheriff out of Maricopa County for decades.
Correct, yeah.
Arizona.
Yes.
Very nice. He's
He's
got to be 90 now, 90 years old. Still kicking, still strong.
Already. Oh, wow. Yes,
I think he's nice.
Very fit
Yeah.
and doing well. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I appreciate the tips, Kathy. Great to hear from you.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Have a great day.
You as well.
All right.
So, guys, I have TJump with me for the first time on the Hake Report. It's not the first time I've talked with him. TJump is on Twitter at TJump_, an atheist philosopher who runs a YouTube channel. TJump, all one word, TJump, debating professors and others on whether God exists. I appeared on his stream January 25th. TJump debates Hake on evidence of God. And prior to that, I debated TJump and others in panel discussions in person, which was cool. Modern Day Debate Convention in Dallas. Hake debated this transgender madness and leftism and the CRT stuff. And TJump is kind of liberal, but kind of reasonable sometimes. And used to be a Christian, now he's an atheist. TJump, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, great to be back on. You totally forgot about the time we went to go get like Asian pho together.
Yeah, that's right. We had pho over there in Dallas. That was cool.
Yeah, for sure. How have you been?
Been well. So I saw you on Modern Day Debate like last week or so, debating against this Mango Tea young guy who's been super chatting whenever I debate on Modern Day Debate. Is racism real? And you said Nazis were real, racism is real. And
Solid argument.
did it go further than that? Because I didn't watch the whole thing. I saw
Mango is not the most comprehensive debater. He doesn't really go much deeper than the very surface level. So
yeah,
we hoping to get into it a little more in detail with you.
So in your mind, racism exists. Has it always existed, and will it always exist?
No. So at one point, humans didn't exist, so there was no racism.
Okay.
And at one point, there will probably be no humans, and there will be no racism. I think that at some point we will evolve to the point where we're like modifying humans with technology, and then racism isn't going to be a thing because it's going to be technologism, something where different technologies are biased based on what technology you have, but it's definitely not going to be like what it is today.
Yeah. And what is it today? What's your description of what it is today?
Yeah, so racism is a bunch of generalizations made by in-group and out-group biases that are a tendency due to human evolution. And so people have a preference for specific physical traits, usually similar to their own, and associate negative traits to people who have different physical features than their own.
Does it happen frequently that people internalize racism against their own? Because a lot of blacks think that they have internalized racism.
I don't even know what internalized racism means.
So that means that they hate themselves because they've been brainwashed by white culture.
Very rarely. It's rarely the case that you hate yourself. Luckily for human biology, our brains have evolved to like ourselves the vast majority of the time. There's certain features we hate about ourselves, like if we're overweight, I hate that about myself, and other things that I can't control. Like I really don't like having to like eat all the time. It's kind of a pain.
Man, is racism bad?
I don't think opinions are bad. So I don't think any opinion or thought you have, even if you completely hate another race with every ounce of your opinionated being, as long as you don't act on it, I wouldn't say it's immoral. I'd say it's only immoral if you act on those feelings to infringe on some other group or some other individual's rights to live. And so I wouldn't say the opinion is wrong. I'd say the way people act on the opinion is wrong.
Do you think that this very subtle, hard to detect, but then when you see the stats, it bears out, supposedly, according to the liberals, systemic racism is real, where the juries are sentencing the blacks to longer sentences for the so-called same crimes as the whites? Do you think that's real and racist and wrong?
Well, so systemic racism is super arbitrary. Like it can mean literally anything depending on who you talk to. So I've talked to a few people. I talked to Aaron a little while ago. He said systemic racism essentially is anything that a system will produce different outcomes for people of different races, whether or not it's intentional or not. And I think that's just dumb. I think that kind of definition is completely ridiculous. That just means reality is racist, essentially.
Right.
So I think if you define systemic racism as there are certain policies that specifically target a particular group intentionally, then yeah, that definitely existed. That existed all throughout time. We know there are policies like the Jim Crow laws, which specifically targeted black people intentionally. And the writers literally said they targeted black people. So yes, there are definitely systemic racist laws, as long as you define systemic racism in a coherent way, where it literally means a law specifically targeting a race.
Were those understandable? Were those ever justified? given that we were a white country and trying to look out for our own?
I don't think so. I think that for them to be justified, there'd have to be some kind of like scientific evidential basis that they'd have a positive outcome rather than just them just being reactionary. I don't like this, therefore we're going to ban it. Since all of the scientific evidence showed that it was a counterproductive law that didn't actually help society, it never was justified. It was more just an intuitive feeling that we don't like this group of people, so we're going to block them from our communities. And so I don't think in any of those cases where there were systemic racist laws that they were and ever justified in that way. There are some that are called systemic racism that aren't. So like laws where there's increased policing, where there's increased violence, like that's not systemic racism, that's just policing. Like if we were to
Right.
abolish all police today and we're going to reestablish them, we'd probably put the most police where the most crime is, and so it'd look about the same, and you wouldn't call that systemic racism, that'd just be common policing.
Is it true that you want to become president of the United States someday?
Yes.
Wow. Man, you're talking to me. That's a risk.
Make you my running mate. You can be my VP Hake.
Nice. I'll be your Mike Pence. But you said it seems like you're kind of caricaturing the South and maybe even the Nazis when you say that they were being racist or whatever, because they simply arbitrarily, reactionarily don't like these people. But they've had problems, the diversity, as you know. I know that you support anti-discrimination laws from other talks that we've had, and you think that advances society and makes a benefit for all generally, for the most part.
Yeah.
But this diversity thing has brought about problems, and anti-discrimination laws, as you may know, has fed, frivolous anti-discrimination lawsuits, or when people are different and they have a conflict. It's bad enough when you have a conflict with your own family members, but then you have a conflict with a black and you're a white. It just feeds the suspicions of each other. Oh, it's just he's treating me this way because I'm white or because I'm black, when it has nothing to do with that. It's just a disagreement so often. So it just breeds even more unnecessary conflict between people.
But those seem to be like small things, like the fact that I totally agree that there are ridiculous claims of racism and discrimination that are accused of lots of people, but the benefits of anti-discrimination laws, of giving everyone of every race an opportunity to succeed and get education and become scientists, that is such a huge benefit to the economy. We can just look at economic policies where they do this, and the economic growth is significantly higher, like in the billions. The amount of allowing, for example, women in the workforce, which I don't think you have a very interesting opinion on,
right?
That has grown the economy so massively. Any tiny little bad side effects where people are accused of sexism or whatever are small by comparison. So if I was going to be president, for example, and I had to decide, should we have a country that allows equal opportunity for all races and sexes, I'm gonna be like, yes, we should go for this, because even though it may lead to some kind of spurious lawsuits, the amount of economic benefit that it provides is so overwhelmingly positive that the tiny amount of bad things is like, so what?
The lawsuits and things are, to me, they're kind of just the tip of the iceberg, because there's a lot of hatred and discord that naturally occurs among human beings. And there's a lot of crime that kind of grows, and what I call moral degradation that grows among communities. And this diversity thing, have you noticed that there is this dominant cultural attack upon whites in our country and other countries around the world?
Well, definitely some groups do attack white and Western culture a lot. That's a thing, but it's not a majority position. It's a loud minority, a bunch of random cranky Karens on Twitter mostly. But like, if we're looking at how society is actually run, the vast majority.
You don't see Joe Biden and the Democrat Party and many of the rhinos are participating in this. It's not just Karens on Twitter.
So it seems to me that the vast majority of politicians do absolutely nothing when it comes to policies. All they do is they talk. So they say things to appease their base, both on the Republican and Democratic side, but they do literally nothing to make any positive change whatsoever. So
Right.
when Biden says all these things, like, can you name any policies he's actually implemented that are in any way trying to redistribute the wealth from the white majority?
He is definitely letting people in at the border. Like he's getting, in my opinion, this Title 42 thing that's a public health order allowing us to turn away migrants at the border. I think we should be allowed to turn away migrants at the border with or without any health concern.
Yeah, but do you think that is an attempt to take away power from the white majority? Because to me, that's just, oh, here's a bunch of more workers to do all of the cheap jobs that white people don't want to do, and they're going to be underpaid, and the work they generate is going to generate more profit for the white billionaires. So this doesn't in any way change the demographics of the people in power in America. All it does is give them more opportunity to make more money because you have now cheap labor. So the corporate enterprises, the reason they're okay with this is because they make more money.
Yeah, the ill-gotten gain is a big part of that. But I would say that it's also political, because whites are the only only majority conservative population in the country among all the different ethnicities. All the rest of them, including many of those who are called white, are majority Democrat. So it's also politically motivated, in addition to the ill-gotten gain that you mentioned.
Oh, definitely. But the question here is, like, is Biden really trying to redistribute power and wealth away from essentially the white cultures? He's trying to demonize white culture. And he's not doing that by letting in immigrants. In fact, letting in immigrants is supporting the white culture. It's giving them more money and more power because they have cheaper labor. And so if the goal of the Democratic Party was to redistribute power and wealth, letting in immigrants does not in any way help them to do that. All it does is give them more political power so they can reestablish their already considerable white power wealth.
You say it, white power wealth. But I mean, it sounds like you're basically agreeing with me, but you're just saying that it's an attack on the normal conservative whites, let's say, on the decent ones.
So I would make a distinction between trying to damage white culture and trying to attack conservative culture. I think those are two different things. So like Western culture as a whole, I'm a liberal, so I'm classical liberal, center left, and that's also white culture. It's always been white culture. It's this from the Greeks on. And so the Democratic Party isn't essentially trying to redistribute power to non-white culture. They definitely don't like conservative culture, but they're not trying to take away white culture.
Okay. Interesting. I have some super chats to read, and you guys, would you be up for taking calls from the people?
Sure.
I have some super chats to read. You guys can call in 888-775-3773 over there on Odyssey. Uncle Ted 88 says anti-discrimination laws are anti-white on their face, but my economy. Do you follow what his point is there?
Not exactly. So if I say I want to have, like, in the way that affirmative action in that case would be, I think, fitting his comments. But when we're talking about anti-discrimination laws, we're not talking about affirmative action, because affirmative action is discriminatory. But anti-discrimination laws are just saying that you must allow people of other races to work in your business or to shop in your business, and so they must have equal levels of rights or opportunity. But I would agree that, like, affirmative action is going too far, and that would be discriminatory.
Part of the problem is, I think that since you're an atheist, you're a little bit more loosey-goosey on like morality, if you will. I know that you believe in an absolute morality, even though you aren't an atheist. But I don't know. I've seen the country on like a major moral decline, but since we're maybe thriving on some level, you're fine with it. Thriving, financially, seemingly, at least for a while, on some level.
I'm not sure what you mean there. So when you say loosey-goosey on morality, my view of morality is you're right. I believe in objective morality. I'm a moral realist, like most philosophers who are also mostly atheists. And the standard of morality is essentially well-being for humanity. So morality is the best possible moral world you could ever achieve is one where it's physically impossible to force anyone to do anything they don't consent to doing. And so if we're moving closer to a world where it's harder and harder to force people to do things they don't consent to doing, we're becoming better. We have moral progress in society, which is the pattern we've seen throughout pretty much all of humanity, that there's this moral progress. We get better as society goes on. And so I don't know what you mean when you see a moral decline. It seems like we're morally improving based off of pretty much every analytic moral standard we have.
The country is seemingly like as divided. Well, I don't know about what the Civil War was like because I wasn't around back then, but the country is really divided right now. And it has been so for probably more than 20 years, certainly around the time I noticed it when I started paying more attention to politics, when I started voting and stuff. With George W. Bush's election, you saw how close that election was. And it's been divided and kind of for the worse, in my opinion, notwithstanding the economic benefit that we've gotten from like the information age and stuff like that.
What do you mean? So like, I don't see a problem with differing opinions. Having people who disagree, I think, is totally fine. So I don't see that as a moral decline that we disagree on things.
Well, I mean, you're for the LGBT agenda on the whole, right? You're for the same-sex marriage thing.
Yes.
You're for the transgenders, at least the adults, being allowed to do whatever they do and make the rest of us go along with it.
I don't know what that means. I don't
like we have to.
So I wouldn't be for like forcing people to use pronouns. Like I'm against that.
Yeah.
So
that's nice.
Transgender bathrooms, I think that we should just have like a third kind of a bathroom or something. Like I wouldn't want to force anyone to adopt that policy. I think it should be up to the individual companies whether they do that or not, what their policy is. So I mean, my only advocacy is that trans people should be treated exactly the same as everybody else.
You wanted freedom for people, not forcing people to do stuff, but there's a lot of business owners who, if they had their druthers, they would be discriminating. They would be serving some and not others.
Sure. And I think that if we were in a world where there is infinite resources, that wouldn't be a problem. So if we had infinite resources, we could supply everyone with everything they needed, then sure, you could discriminate against whoever you want. But because there's a limited amount of resources and we want to try to grow the economy as much as possible, then we want to have everyone have as much opportunity to get the resources they can in the most efficient way possible so that they can continue to thrive and grow the economy. And so the reason we have anti-discrimination laws, even though I think all laws are immoral to some degree because they're forcing you to do something you don't consent to doing, they're pragmatic in that we need laws to encourage things that benefit the lives of everyone, to help grow the economy, to help build the quality of life. And so if there's something we can stop people from doing that will cause harm to others, then it's a good thing to have a law to do that, like stoplights. It's a good thing to stop people from speeding all the time because it saves lives. And so if anti-discrimination laws can provide more opportunity to minority groups to be able to gain access to resources more efficiently, like to a shop that's more nearby or whatever, or cheaper, or who knows what, then that will allow them to have access to resources which they can then use to grow faster and benefit the economy more and do all kinds of things. And so it's a good thing to have those laws pragmatically, even though in a best of all possible worlds, we shouldn't have any kind of laws forcing anyone to do anything.
You mentioned women working, and I have a super chat about that from Asmodor over here. He says the quote unquote economic benefit of doubling the worker pool by allowing women in benefits corporations, not people/families, to claim studies show people are doing better now than in decades past is retarded on its face. I don't know if you followed. I didn't quite follow what he said there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So there's a lot of research on women in the workforce, and we can compare economies.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let me reread it with at least my comprehension. The economic benefit of doubling the worker pool by allowing women in, it benefits corporations, but it doesn't benefit people and families.
Yeah, that seems to make sense as an interpretation, but it seems false. So like if we can literally look at the economies of countries before and after they allowed women in the workforce. And we can literally see the economic growth, the quality of life, the technological growth, the intellectual growth on every measurable metric that matters to anybody. It's better in the societies that allowed women in the workforce to those that didn't. Now, forcing women in the workforce, that would be bad. I wouldn't approve of slavery. And so women can choose to still be stay-at-home moms. That's fine. But giving them the option to choose to go to school or go to work or whatever does benefit everyone significantly by like an almost immeasurable amount. It's massive. The difference between like Saudi Arabia, where women are still barely able to work or barely able to just allowed to drive like a couple of years ago. The quality of life difference between those kinds of societies and America and the UK is obvious. It's huge. It's huge. Like they're not happier in those countries than we are in ours.
You know, you mentioned a couple of different things. What do you mean by intellectual growth? You said we got intellectual growth by women in the workplace.
Yes, women have brains and they can learn and discover things and make scientific progress and do all kinds of shit, make discoveries. And so if we have 50% of the population who are not being as allowed the same level of access to scientific research, to working in jobs where they can make technological progress, then half of the population are not making discoveries and innovations that they could be. So women discover shit and invent shit too.
Keep it clean, just for my...
Oh, my apologies.
No problem. Thanks. But okay, I get your point. But women kind of, they get affirmative actioned in right now, which I know you're not for affirmative action. And they also breed like this division and resentment in the workplace, and they kind of hamper things and slow things down. I think that they were the reason, my suspicion, this is one of my suspicions, that they were behind the shutdowns, the overreaction to the virus that we just went through the past couple of years, because they can't really handle stress, and they pass that stress on to the media, and the media passes that stress on to the people and fearmongers about the virus and says, we need to shut stuff down. And in my opinion, we did not need to shut down to the level that we did, and that hampered our economic progress. Does that follow that?
I guess so. I don't think I would agree. Like, for example, China has pretty much only men in all of their governing bodies. It's pretty much all men, like all of them.
But
they
they're
had,
communists. They're basically women, because communism is a female-minded. But go ahead. Finish your point. Go ahead.
So in China, they discriminate against women quite severely. Parents don't want women kids. They want male children because there's a pretty significant discrimination against women in China. And so men have most of the power in China, and they have most of the shutdowns. And the shutdowns happened in pretty much every society. And ironically, I think like Sweden or something, one of the Norwegian super liberal countries was one of the ones that had no shutdowns. Like they did nothing. And so one of the most like women mindset countries you could probably list is the one that didn't do the shutdown. And so it seems like the data does not support that conclusion, that most of the shutdowns were men oriented, not women oriented. And I don't think women slowed down the workforce. I mean, it's obviously sometimes the case that some women are annoying and they do that, but that's like this extreme minority. So it's an extreme minority, obviously.
Really?
Causing dysfunction in the workplace, also again extreme minority. As far as I know, that most guys would prefer women in the workplace to other guys in the workplace because it's more entertaining.
Sometimes. All right. Anything else anything else to that? Because I have another super chat about
sure, we can go to the next one.
Okay. Letting immigrants in, according to Asmodor, displaces white workers and lowers wages across the board. It does not benefit whites economically.
So if it lowers wages across the board, that means that all of the corporations have to pay their employees less. And if they pay their employees less, they make more money. So if if they're lowering wages, that helps white people who own companies to make a significant amount more money. They want to lower wages. They love it when they lower wages. The primary
goes in-
expenditure of a company is to pay their employees. And so if they have to pay their employees less, they are happy. They absolutely love it. And so, yes, when we bring in immigrants who we have to pay less, that makes billionaires a lot more money. They love that.
How many white billionaires are there though? And there's like, this
lot.
is not benefiting white people. This is benefiting maybe like the corporations and the commie capitalists, as I call them, the people in the government and the people who are running the bigger corporations that can handle this type of stuff.
Well, I'm thinking more like senators, all the people
Yeah.
in power, all the people who own companies. The vast majority of millionaires are white. 90% of millionaires come from real estate ownership, who are the vast majority of are white by a huge margin. So if we're looking at wealth in the country and white culture, I guess, who has the power, who gets to determine what the correct way of life is, it's all white people. The vast majority by millionaires in real estate, all white pretty much.
But that doesn't tend to be like they don't represent the normal white people. They don't represent the majority of white people. They may represent the majority of billionaires, but they don't represent the majority of white people.
Oh, sure. I totally agree there. I just say that if the context of the conversation is more like, if the goal is to redistribute wealth and power away from white people, this is having the opposite effect. This is giving it more to white people, a specific kind of white people, but
Right.
white people.
Yeah, it's like a certain not normal white people.
the wealthy asshole ones. My
right.
apologies.
Yeah. Okay. Apology accepted. Let's get to some calls. Yeah, let's get to some calls. I may have some more follow-up about the Nazis in the South, but let me get to Art in Ohio, who's on the line. Art, how are you doing? You're on with TJump.
What's up with Hake and
TJump.
TJump?
Hey.
And how you doing, TJump? I'm trying to lay this out how I want to lay it out.
I'm doing good. I like the way you say my name. It's really cool.
Say that again.
I like the way you say my name. It sounds really cool.
Yes, sir. We'll see if you like this real quick. I'm going to lay down this the bottom line because Artie R from Ohio says so. So let me see if you get my point. So you said that females to the workforce has basically helped the American economy and stuff, and not adding on the fact that some of the sexual harassment lawsuits and stuff, basically what I heard you say earlier.
Yes, so there are sexual harassment lawsuits, but the amount of benefits to the economy is in the billions of GDP that women in the workforce have contributed billions in the GDP. Sexual harassment lawsuits have taken away a few million.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, so what about did your study say anything about how many white men or black men that they don't lie on, and how many of them came up there and allegedly don't kill people on the job because they was mad because they was a female lied on them, or a female just lied on them. Let's say they was in a relationship voluntarily, and the female just happened to not like him no more, or like her no more, because we know there's lesbians running around, so we know that's going on in the workplace. So what does your study say about that?
That doesn't in any way come to compare to the like $500 billion that have been contributed by women in the workforce. So the $500 billion essentially from the initial start of just introducing women in the workforce is significantly more than all of that times a million. So all of the bad things that you're imagining, if we multiply that by a million, it's still less than the positive contribution that women in the workforce make to the economy.
Okay, well, this is the bottom line. Let's see if you can get what Art is saying, bro. So, you sound like you're putting a price tag on somebody's life, and this ain't stuff that I'm imagining. This is stuff that's going on. This is stuff that we seeing in politics, on the news, and in everyday life. If you in the ghettos or in the democratic, impoverished black area, in impoverished white area. So these ain't things that I'm imagining. Then you say that you know, that was just, I'm gonna go to my next point too. You said that also that liberals or something or whatnot, they're not destroying the white man or something like that. You were saying with the stuff that they're implementing.
Yeah, they're not trying to take away money or power from rich white people.
Okay, got you. Okay, I just want to make sure I was right in what I was saying. So that's what you. Well, I'm trying to figure out how you would get that logical idea or be able to see that logically like that when everything that's being implemented 20 years from now is only the inevitable that it's going to destroy white and black men. So you say so what you saying that it's raining when you peeing on me. So you say
not quite.
Yeah, go
following.
ahead, Hake. Go ahead, crack an Artie Wise while you at it. But go ahead, I'm listening to you, brother.
Sure. So like all of the policies that are implemented by people in government is to make them more rich and more powerful. None of them are trying to take away power or money from rich white people. That's the opposite of every one of their policies. They want more money and more power. So I don't know. The fact that there are obviously some women and some
I think
of every group who like misuse certain laws and who like abuse the legal system, like, yes, that is a thing. But the number of people who abuse the legal system is far, far, far less than the number of people who are benefited by it. And so if we're trying
numbers to support that, where are your numbers? Where are you getting your numbers at to support this alleged claim that you making? Because I don't know this to be any facts that you make.
Google GDP from women in the workforce. It's currently about 40% of the GDP. That's half of the $6 to $17 trillion is from women in the workforce. That would be gone if they didn't have women in the workforce. Does
this reflect any court costs that any of the men are taking on from them being criminally charged or something from behind a female in the workforce or something like that?
Yes. So if women had charged more men with sexually assault than half of the GDP of America, America would be destroyed. So if there were more legal costs than half of the GDP of the country would immediately go bankrupt. So
I think it's going to happen more insidiously than that, though. T-Jump, I think that the family breakdown is, you see that the families are breaking down. I think that's quite clear according to the numbers, but we haven't really seen the full effects of that. But it is having major effects, and that's why people are kind of turning into atheists, and they're turning kind of lost in this sex and gender thing, and
I'm not seeing
more and more hateful.
There. So like if we have a culture who's transitioning to a new ideology, and that new ideology has an average of a 6-point IQ difference with a 10-year average longer lifespan with an
6-point IQ loss
increase. So atheists have a 6-point IQ higher on average than religious people.
No, but that's not making, you guys aren't breeding to be a higher IQ. Our IQ in America is going down, even though you guys are the higher IQ people. The IQ of America, I think, has been on major decline with the immigration
I don't think so. So like
chemicals in the water.
So
maybe.
All of the data shows IQ increases every year. It goes up every year.
Really?
Yes. There is actually.
But countrywide, I think
it's called the Flynn effect. They're literally called the Flynn effect, where the IQ just continues to go up no matter what. Flynn effect. But so if we're transitioning to these new ideologies that give everyone better qualities of life, happier lives, more freedom, say would increase divorce or whatever, that's fine. I don't see a problem here as long as we can still have a better society, even if it loses something like marriage. I don't see that as an issue as long as we have better qualities of life.
Excuse me, Keith.
Go ahead, Art. Last word, Art.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
So it sounds like you substituting money for lives. It sounds like you substituting marriage for families and lives. You see what I'm saying? It's like you use it. You saying the couple jumps, the 2 jumps that the females have made forward, but you ain't saying the 10 jumps that they don't made back. T-Jump.
Well, I am seeing those. So it's kind of like guns. Guns kill people, but they are also used for self-defense, for police, for hunting. And so there's lots of positive things guns provide,
Mhm.
but there's also some negative things guns provide. Should we ban all guns for everyone because some people misuse guns? Or should we say, oh, look, guns have a positive aspect for a large number of the population. Therefore, we should allow them to have guns, even though there's this negative side effect of this small minority who misuses them.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Okay, we know there's negatives and there's positives, but are the positives outweighing the negatives? It seems like it's way more negative than there is positive. And
Well,
again,
again,
something else you said about that the females you said something like they bring intellectual and they help the males be smarter. I'm not saying that all females is dumb, but and I'm not saying that some females can't come and give you ideas, or they can be extra 4 eyes and extra 2 ears, or 4 ears if you got them with you and you not looking or hearing or paying attention to something that they can't be like, hey, did you see that over there? You see what I'm saying? But as me and my 36 years of living, birthday coming up here in about 6 months, I only met a handful of females that I was able to learn from, and that were able to teach me to where I was able to comprehend what they were saying. Most of the dudes that I was around, they are always had been able to explain stuff to where I'm able to understand. And that's part of why the reason that I like Jesse Lee Peterson Hake, because most of my teachers and stuff and coming up, I've been around female teachers and all that. So when I listen to Hake and Jesse, I'm able to comprehend what they're saying because they're coming from an alpha male, logical speaking platform, a truthful platform. Go ahead, I'm listening. I said a lot in that.
I appreciate that, Art, man. I'm going to hang up, but you can continue to listen. Take care, man.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, thank you, too. I'll catch you later.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, T-Jump.
Yeah, thank you. I did want to comment on that last thing. So I think he should spend more time in engineering, biology, chemistry, and other academic fields where there's tons of women who are making tons of discoveries, like Mary Curie, like the no ether theorem. Women make significant contributions in every field that men did not or could not have made without them, because they have brains and they can discover things that men don't.
All right. Let me get to, since we're on this topic, DJ, a first-time caller in North Carolina. DJ, you're on the line with T-Jump. T-Jump, can you stay at least 15 more minutes?
Yeah.
Cool. Go ahead, DJ.
Hey, TJ, how y'all doing?
Doing well.
Pretty good. How are you?
So, TJ, I just want to know, what was your view on specifically married women in the workforce?
It's fine.
Do you think you think married women should work, like even like with kids and all that type of stuff?
I think that if women want to work, then they should work. If they don't want to work, then they should not work.
Okay, well, the reason I bring that up is because I'm going to try to keep like religion out of it, because I know obviously you're an atheist. And so the thing is like I'd always seen that married women, especially with children, if they're working in the workforce, they're creating a competition for men who are trying to raise an unfair competition of men who are trying to raise their families. Because and I think the only reason why married women with children work is either if you're struggling that bad or it's for greed. Most of the time, two couples who are working, one of them is able to provide. It's just that two people working, they say, oh, both of us work. We can get a better house, a bigger house, better cars, better things, bigger things. When as soon as they get married, they leave their job, their husband's working, and then, let the husband provide. You humble yourself, get a little bit of a smaller house, a car that's just reliable, things like that. Let your wife, the mother of the children, raise the children, take care of the husband, all that type of stuff. So that's why I'm saying that's a problem with so many married women working. There are a lot of men who are trying to provide for their family, and these women are taking up these spots when they don't need it.
Well, I mean, there's only like 3 reasons to work. 1 is that you need the money. 2 is that you want more money. And 3 is that you just enjoy the work. Those are pretty much the only options, whether you're a man or a woman. And men like to work for more money also. It's not so men are also competing with other men to get more money. That's why we have CEOs and shareholders and property real estate businesses. Like, most people work because they want more money so they can buy nice things. That's kind of why work exists. It's not really a problem that women are competing with men. That's just how economies work, and that has benefited the economy. It hasn't damaged it at all. And if they don't want to work, they don't have to if they have significant financial resources. So I'm not really seeing the issue here. The fact that women choose to work and they are now a competitor in the work market for prices is fine. That's just how jobs work.
Well, and I do agree with you that women should be able to work. I'm saying that married women with children, like especially like in a marriage, well, yeah, obviously, like married women, children. That's what I'm saying. It's a problem because, if they're in a certain position, like they should be able to leave that position and open that position for a man who is trying to provide for his family the way things should be, the way it was for thousands of years.
But that way was worse. That's why introducing women into the workforce benefited everyone. So if we have a way that works objectively better and improves the quality of life for everyone significantly, then I think we now have a better metric that is improvement from the way things were. So we went from a bad way to a better way.
I mean, the thing is, but yeah, they're providing services, but I mean, who is it better for? Because we have, sexual harassment and assault cases went through the roof, which I'm not saying, those men should control themselves, but those went through the roof. And then you have like what's happening in Spain right now, where they're giving free leave for every month for menstrual cycles, or however often, because that's just the common norm. Some women have menstrual cycles more often than that. So it's like they're going to be losing out on average 4 to 6 days every month on this type of work. So like, how does that benefit the employer?
The 40% of the GDP, which accounts for about $8 trillion in annual revenue, that would be how.
So if you own the business, you would be okay with somebody leaving like 6 days, 4 to 6 days every month.
If they made me $8 trillion, they could do whatever the hell they want.
See, but that's the thing is, like, there's just now passing this bill. So like, I doubt that if even if you hired a full staff of women, if they were all gone for a week solid, like I doubt that they would be making you that trillion.
Well, I don't care what the work schedule is like. Like, we know that the work schedule in America is one of the least effective. There are countries that have 4 or 5 day weekends, and you have half the year off if you want it, paid leave, all kinds of things. There are countries all over the world that allow significantly more opportunities for people to take time off, but have significantly higher income ratios or work ratios to produce more effective products. So I don't really care how much time they take off, as long as they're making me money and making me products. That's all I need. So the time off doesn't make a difference here. All I care about is, do they make me a profit? And all of the science that we have and all of the data of these policies that were implemented in America have been implemented in other countries before, and they still make obscene profits. And so obviously we know that even the things we're doing here in America, which are significantly less progressive than the ones in other countries, we're still going to make a profit off this by a huge margin.
DJ, I appreciate it, man. And last word, go for it.
Yeah, last word I want to ask is, I heard you were talking about, like, you were saying that guns kill people. I don't know, why do people say guns kill people? Can you define that for me, please?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, it's fine. Like, if they didn't have guns, less people would be killed. So like, if we look at countries like the UK, where they don't have guns and they have knives, the amount of people killed in attacks is significantly lower. So the ability to own a gun increases the rate of murder or successful murders.
But he's for the Second Amendment, DJ. He's saying the guns on the whole are a benefit.
You say on the benefit of like the murderer side?
No, it's guns on the whole are a benefit to society.
So yeah, they have
they're worth having in society. He wasn't saying it's a bad thing.
So it helps a lot of people.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that
I gotta go, DJ. We gotta keep moving. Take care, man.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
okay,
appreciate
right,
it. Call me again. All right.
Yep.
Take care. With the women working, that has definitely impacted families, because it's harder for women not to work when they're married and having children, because of the inflation has gone up because women are working. So we have all this ill-gotten gain, and it's put a stress on the families who want to do it right and take care of their own kids?
Well, I don't know if you can call it doing it right again, since if the economy and technology and intellectual rigor of an entire society is increased by a huge margin, like 40%, and all of the quality of life of everyone in that society is better off by doing it this other way. If there are people who want to do it the initial way, that's fine. But since this other way is better for pretty much everyone else in society, 300 million people in America, I don't think their way is the better way if it would be worse for these 300 million people.
But you see the rise of prominence of CRT, which is just another name for the fake racism stuff that's being taught to kids. I don't see intellectual rigor being taught in our public schools in America. It seems to me that people are becoming dumber and more spoiled as a result of all of this ill-gotten gain, because the kids are being easily brainwashed away to hate their parents, think they're smarter than their parents, and fall for the fake racism lie.
So CRT, I don't agree with CRT.
I know.
Because standpoint epistemology, I think, is
It's
inherently flawed. But
yeah, it's not intellectually rigorous.
Well, it's just inherently fallacious. It's objectively
Yeah.
false. But that isn't something that's taught like in most schools. It's taught in 0.000000001% of teachers. Like it's not a common thing. There's a few crazy people.
Did you see the insane overreaction to the Black Lives Matter? The George Floyd, the knee on the neck situation. That shows
they weren't taught that in preschool.
I'm talking about people were brainwashed into overreacting anytime a white does anything to a black. And they're thinking, oh, it's a white racist. And oh, that was so horrible. They're emotionally overreacting because they're not thinking like men, they're thinking like women. And they're brainwashed to believe in this racism thing. It's more than just this tiny, tiny subset that's being taught so-called CRT. I'm saying CRT is the tip. I know, but that's the tip of the iceberg. I'm saying the racism brainwashing in the culture has people acting insane.
Sure.
And there are, I'm telling you, it's much more than what you're saying, because aside from CRT itself, the fake racism stuff, these female teachers and male teachers who are brainwashed in the racism in college are turning around and pushing it on kids.
Right. So there's a difference between like CRT, which is a very minority thing. Very few people ever hear about that unless you're taking like a social justice class, in which case you're never going to get a job anyway. But those kinds of things and what are being taught to the 0.000 something percent of preschoolers, like those aren't really big concerns. So obviously racism in general and the larger ideology of progressive leftism,
ridiculously overhyped,
issue.
Right? Yeah.
Yes, it is. I totally agree with you there, but it's equally as overhyped as, say, Christianity. And I think they're both are equally as wrong, and both equally have as many silly beliefs that cause people to do silly things.
Okay. I got to get to one last call. We have only 5 minutes till the time. Are you able to stay over a few minutes if we happen to go over?
Yeah, I'll definitely have to leave a little bit, like by
all right.
12:20 at least.
Okay, cool. Let me get to Asmodor on the line in Texas. Asmodor, you are on with T-Jump.
Good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, it's amazing to see another one of these atheist YouTubers be completely dishonest through and through, even with himself. He self-identified. He would have his audience believe that he is some type of classical liberal, as goes back to the
Thomas Paine
Enlightenment, like he's a modern day Thomas Jefferson. He is not a classical liberal. He is a far left cultural Marxist anti-white. And these statistics that he is citing is the perfect example of it. He kept saying that so-and-so is good for white people, so-and-so is good for white people, until he was confronted with the fact and stumbled over his own words that, oh, well, it's the 1% of white corporate owners and people in government and so forth, and the billionaire class who benefit, and that means whites benefit. No, number one, that does not mean whites benefit. That means that a class of elites, a very small class of elites, benefits. And he is also conflating a large number of Jews as whites when you look at the number of people in that billionaire class. Now,
Jews are white.
Bringing in immigrants. Let me finish my points, and then I'll stop, and you can respond to them. Bringing in immigrants does not help whites or the economy in any way. Immigrants are subsidized overwhelmingly by welfare. That is how the vampiric corporate class benefits from immigration. They pay them next to nothing, and the taxpayer is on the hook. 85.8% of Hispanic immigrant households receive federal food aid. And lastly, the GDP is no measure of quality of life or economic well-being of the average American or the average American family. The only people who will ever believe that it is are people who are not old enough to know what life was like before women entered the workforce and before all this immigration came along, wrecked the single worker household. To claim that a group of people, a group of Americans who have no savings, who are deeper in debt than any group of people in history, and who have to work like crazy just to stay above water, are better off than people 40 years ago is insane. And I'll stop.
Go ahead, T-Jump.
Yeah, so a lot of things there. Yeah, we are better off than 40 years ago. Like, pick any metric of well-being you want. GDP is just an obvious choice. Life expectancy, quality
Savings
of life,
is a good
happiness.
one. Take that metric.
Savings doesn't matter. Savings is irrelevant. I don't care about savings. Like, debt is just an economic tool. What matters is do you have food? Do you have a house over your house, a job? Can you feed your family? Can you get your kids to college? More people can do all of those things today, regardless of savings, because debt is just a different economic tool. Whether or not you have savings literally doesn't matter. What matters is what's your life expectancy? What's your quality of life? Can you support a family? Like, those things matter. Whether or not you have savings, I don't care. I don't care if money even exists.
If people are so able to support families, then why is a family unit such a rare thing now compared to 40 years ago?
Yeah, people
because
are
you don't need a family unit to raise a family. Being able to raise people, give them enough money to live, you don't need to be a part of your family. Like,
if you don't have a family unit, you are not a family.
Literally, you're not understanding here. So you can raise people, you can give them the quality
I'm
of life.
Understanding.
Wait,
You're not
don't interrupt
past me. I'm
stop,
understanding perfectly.
Stop, bro. You gotta
No,
stop.
This is really.
Hey,
you're lying.
Could you let him?
You're a
could you mute
liar.
him for a minute so I can finish my
Go ahead.
statement? So you can raise a family if they're not a part of their family. So if you can have many kids and have them go off into some other person's family, and if you still provide them with money, you're still raising a family, even though they're separate from your personal platonic family. It doesn't matter. What matters is the population. How many of the population can get a good life, food, education, housing? How many of them have a higher life expectancy, regardless of whether or not they're in your house? Doesn't matter at all. And the rate of people who have a longer life expectancy, healthier lives, better better quality of life in every measurable metric has improved. And you don't need a platonic family for that. It's just irrelevant.
You said 40 years ago.
Is going down.
You said life expectancy is going down.
No, it's not.
It is.
Literally any scientific paper on life expectancy.
Yes. You're the big studies guy. Go look it up yourself. A couple of years ago, it was all over the news. Life expectancy in the United States for the first time in something like 50 years actually going down.
I remember seeing that.
So the fact that it went down on a graph, like graphs, you usually go up and down and up and down and up and down. The trend is what we're looking at, and the trend is still up.
Studies matter until they don't agree with him.
All the studies agree.
People who are like,
all the studies agree here.
Studies say are the most dishonest people on earth. For every study that this person will cite, there will be plenty of studies that say the exact opposite thing.
No, there's not.
Yes, there is. Mark Twain,
just Google life
ago,
expectancy. You can see the chart.
Truth. He said there are lies, damned lies, and statistics, and you, sir, are a damned liar.
If you don't know how to just Google life expectancy and look at the graph and look at where the line is pointing, then that's you problem. Like, trying to bring up Mark Twain quotes here isn't going to denounce the literal line that you can literally see on Google right now.
But it's allowing people. It's allowing people to live longer, because people are like miserable. Like you said, women in the workforce, they're more mentally ill than ever, at least in the past 60 years or so, or 70 years, I think.
Yeah,
No,
and
so actually,
Google
quality of
is
life
in-
has
Google is
also
in no
increased.
way biased, right? We have studies that show Google is not biased, correct?
Google doesn't do the research. Google takes the research from everywhere around the country.
Right, and
puts it
their
in a graph.
results are not biased, are they?
No.
Google's results are not one bit biased, right?
Because Google isn't doing the research. It's the other scientific institutions that are doing
Are
the research.
Google's results biased? Does their
No, it's the
algorithm
academic
produce
paper
biased
done by
results?
academic institutions, and they're just putting.
He's
the
asking a
picture
separate
on
not
question, though.
understanding me. You're just unable to understand what I'm saying. When you Google something, it will give you results to things that Google wants you to see. It doesn't give you unbiased results to a variety of things.
For some things, yes. To academic papers, no. So to the thing I'm talking about,
The
no.
academia itself
Cite
is
your study
biased.
Cite your study that they don't do that with academic studies.
Because they
yeah,
can't
fair point.
pick the academic studies. It's based on peer-reviewed research, which they don't get a say in. So
Give me a
there's
peer-reviewed study that says Google only manipulates results on some things, but not on the academic studies that you think it makes you sound super smart when you say academic studies.
okay. You don't need a paper on this because they get their research from a source, and the source is a
They
particular
pick and
source.
choose what sources will go to the top few thousand of the
there
results.
They
This
don't
is
get to
well
pick
known.
the source. You're not listening. So if they don't get to pick the
They
source,
pick what they present.
no,
They
I've
pick
already
what they
debunked that.
present.
Kiddo, I've already debunked that.
You've
They
debunked
don't
nothing.
get to
You
pick
are
the
not a
academic
debunker.
source.
You're a big LGBT.
Can you mute him so I
but
can
you're
finish
not a
my sentence?
debunker.
Because I gotta no, they do not get to pick the academic sources. The academic sources have a rating system which determines whether or not they're legitimate or not. And Google has to pick from those because they already exist. They can't just pick any random source. It's not like they're picking Nigerian research on nothingness. They don't get an option here. Your ignorance of the topic
rated.
is not my problem.
My sources.
Yes,
I
academic
appreciate
sources.
it, Asmodor. Good call. Take care, man. The academia itself is very biased, and studies themselves are very biased because the education system is liberal, and it's raising up liberals to think in liberal ways and look at things judge things from a liberal stance. And I say liberal in the sense of everything is fine type of thing, when I think we're headed off a cliff more than you may realize in terms of just people's the sense of well-being thing. I think, and like he pointed out, the GDP thing is a distraction from society being right and good.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I agree that GDP isn't like an ultimate measure of happiness, but we can look at, for example, Steven Pinker's Better Angels of Our Nature. It's like a 500-page book that goes through all of the stats over all of recorded history and just says, by every measurable statistic, you just pick whatever you want, essentially, and anything that is relevant to quality of life. Yeah, it's getting better. And I don't know how liberal statistics work in the case of things that are just objective fact, like life expectancy. You can just take a poll of what age were people when they died and then just put it on a graph. You can't look at that in a liberal way and change the numbers. It's a number. Same with physics. You can't look at an atom in a liberal way and make it not an atom.
Right, but he said Asmodor's point was that for the first time in 40 years or something like that, life expectancy went down, which was like a negative sign.
Well, that's not actually the case. So if you look at over the past 40 years, it's gone down about 24 times because graphs, in any graph, it goes up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So there's always variation. What matters is in a graph is the trend. Where does the trend line go? And if you look over the past, just go to the Google, type in life expectancy United States, you can watch the line. It went down over COVID. COVID had a big little bloop, but now it's going back up again. So,
right, and I don't even think that it was the virus itself that brought things down. I think it was the increased crime and the increased misery of the shutdowns and the Black Lives Matter being propped up that same year.
Well, definitely the shutdowns.
There were a lot of
also had an impact.
Yeah, the shutdowns negatively impacted a lot. I think Revolver did a study. Revolver News did a study that showed life years lost as a result of the overreaction to the virus, the shutdowns. and it showed that it killed more people than it helped. In short,
It could be. I haven't done any research on the effect of the shutdown, so I don't really have an opinion on that.
Were you for the shutdowns? Just out of curiosity.
No.
Okay, let me read a few more super chats before I know we have to wrap up here. Asmodor stated in the Odyssey, the vast majority of whites are workers, not owners of corporations nor billionaires, which is a good point.
But again, it seems like the conversation is, are people in power trying to take power and wealth away from white people? Like, that's like,
yes.
And that's where it seems like, well, no, they're trying to take it away from poor people and give it to themselves. It's not like they're trying to take it away from white people.
They're trying to take it away from the fair-minded white people who vote by and large Republican in this country. They're Christians, and they're trying to give it more to a secular, we are the world, let's do this diversity thing type of power. You know, the World Economic Forum type of stuff.
Okay, so I think I would agree with. So they're taking it away from Republican white people and giving it to liberal white people. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, that's okay.
All right. Brandon M with the super chat says, this guest is the result of women in the workforce. 2000s boy band, frosted tips, and effeminate mindset.
Yeah, well, I was actually paid for this for a subscriber goal. I don't normally dye my hair, but okay.
I know. I was surprised to see that. Lord Bibby 42 says, Hake, please ask T-Jump what barbershop butchered his hair. I want to make sure I steer clear. What do you call that anyway? I'm
cheap. I cut my own hair.
Nice. Same here. So Lord Bibby, steer clear of T-Jump's barbershop. John WX25 says, ask Beta Male if he's proud to be white. If he could change his race, what would he be? And he keeps on putting
Jew.
he in his.
I would go full Ashkenazi Jew. They have the highest intellectual IQ rating, the highest return on profit rating, the highest rank in banking and artistry of all of the races. Ashkenazi Jew kick the crap out of everybody else. Sorry, keep cursing accidentally.
Oh, okay, no worries. Well, crap. I don't usually say it in front of the kids, but that's, as cuss words go, that's light. Okay. I appreciate it, man. Very interesting. So were the Nazis, this is a fine point, but you say that the Nazis were racist,
yep.
But they were white, and you're saying that Jews are white, and yep. So they're the same race. So how can they be racist against the same race?
Well, race is a representation of echo clines, and so you can be racist against different groups. Like, people can be racist against Irish. Irish is still white too.
You got to be done by 20 after, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So in other words, they had problems with this group of people, yeah. And they blamed it on the group of people that they had problems with, and so they overreacted to the group and the problems. It wasn't necessarily because when I was taught in school, I was taught, oh, they just hated Jews just because they were Jewish. I didn't learn about what specific. I learned the word scapegoating. Oh, they were scapegoated for economic problems in that country. But when you look into it, it was more they had reasons behind it, and it wasn't just based on race. It was based on the problems that they've had with these people.
Right. So the problem of racism is when you take a minority of people who do a lot of bad things, and then you generalize their bad things to anyone else who has a similar property to that minority. So like, if you take most, I don't know, basketball players are black or whatever, and therefore you think black people are better. Well, not all black people are basketball players. And so if you're going to take that one particular instance of basketball players being really good at basketball and then use that as a generalization of the entire group of people who are black, that would be like an example of the problem. So there are obviously many kinds of people who are problematic in a society, but then if you're going to label anyone who's similar to those people as equally as problematic, or generalize them to be problematic in the same way, that's the racism issue.
But the people of that same group are going to tend to kind of take sides, and you've seen it with blacks frequently. Most blacks may not be criminals, but many or most blacks will vote for or feel some type of undue sympathy toward Black criminals who get themselves killed, for example, or Black Democrat like Barack Obama, so-called Black, who got elected like 96, 98% among the voting. So then that wouldn't that justify the so-called racism against the Blacks that hey, these people, what's wrong with you people? You keep on voting all wrong. You keep on siding with the fake racism thing against victims who are really thugs and stuff like that. So we have
No.
the group you tend to identify with your group, so it causes more division than necessary.
No, I don't think a group tending to vote a particular way is a reason to be racist against them. I think that obviously, like if one group was all criminals or the vast majority of them were mostly criminal all the time, then it would be justified to say, okay, this group is problematic. But if a small minority of that group is criminals, then to treat or generalize the rest of the group as criminals, that would be racist.
But they side with the criminals is the
No,
problem.
not
Even the nice
usually.
ones side with the
So
I mean,
most polls, most Black demographics do vote for more policing. That they like police.
I know
too.
that. Yeah, I know.
So it's most of them are against crime. They don't like crime, especially
But they're
in their
suckers
communities.
they're suckers for criminal victims like Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, George Floyd, people like that.
Yes, people are get sucked into
Because they have a
political
false
and
identity.
advertised things.
Are Blacks
Well,
the most
it's-
racist people in the country?
I don't know what that even means. I have no idea. But I would say that anything that's pushed on the news, the demographic who identifies with that news group is going to latch on to whatever it is they're talking about. So this happens
know.
on the left with George Floyd and
Yeah.
Trayvon Martin and all those people, but also happens on the right with Tucker Carlson and Fox News. And so the same thing isn't really a problem of racism. It's a problem of in-group and out-group bias, of the fact that if you identify with some group and that group has a news agency and they promote certain stories more than others, they're going to latch onto those stories. And so I think that it happens both on the left and the right there, which is equally as problematic.
Okay, back to the super chats. John WX25 did ask, "Are you proud to be white?" I don't know if you answered that one.
No.
Okay.
Like I said, I'd prefer to be an Ashkenazi Jew. I think that'd be awesome.
Lord Bibi42. Oh no, I already read that one. Corlick says, so he admits, meaning you, T-Jump, that immigrants are bad because they funnel money into super corporations and away from the people.
Sort of. There was one thing someone mentioned earlier. Immigrants do use welfare more, but they also bring more
Right.
economic growth. So because they work and generate income that is then used in the economy, it actually benefits the economy to a greater degree than it costs through welfare. And so it's actually a good thing to bring in immigrants. That's why lots of people want immigrants.
Ouch. Well, that's about it for the super chats. I don't really have any time to get to more calls, although there are a lot of people who want to talk to you. I guess I'll have to have you back another time.
Sure.
But last word. Okay, how about this last word on racism? Is it in any good sense to say that, given that there is an insanity about racism, and I was surprised that you brought up Tucker, there is an insane overreaction to racism. Isn't it a benefit to say that racism does not exist because they are attacking people for just being normal, saying true things, or doing their job, they being the mainstream?
Well, I'd say it's the same thing as with the guns. I think there are some people who misuse it and use it to make things up, but the vast majority of the usages of racism are not that. There is
They're
a
beneficial?
yeah, like using the word has a very useful meaning, and the vast majority of people who use the word in common parlance use it to mean what it actually means. And a very small minority are crazy and use it in the super social justice-y way. And so I think the word has value in its original context, and the way its etymology of the word and how it was invented and what it was originally meant to mean has a lot of value. And the new way is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it has always been kind of crazy. I think it's been a divide and conquer type of word, and it's by and large been used only against whites to explain and demonize them, falsely misexplain and demonize them for stuff that they did that any normal person would do.
Well, I don't think that. I think that's the case mostly in America recently. But again, racism was a thing against the Irish, against Jews, against
Understandably so,
pretty
right?
much. I don't think.
I mean,
so.
we had issues with the Irish and all those people, and with the Jews and all them.
Well, we
we
had
had-
issues with a small percentage of them, and then generalized the larger group with those things. Like one of the things that I think was the worst kind of racism was racism against Asian people. Like Asian immigrants worked so hard and generated so much GDP and did so well in the economy, and we were racist against them for pretty much no reason. That was just completely ridiculous. Like we generalized some bad impacts they had and ignored the fact that they worked significantly harder than everybody else and did significantly better in the economy than everybody else. And so those kinds of generalizations are very bad because they take a small sample size and then judge the entire group based off that small sample size.
But the Asians and the blacks and the Hispanics, they're all racist, and if you believe in the racism thing, they are suspicious of the whites, and they don't love the white people. They don't love our country and our values of freedom of speech and things. Like they're going to vote away our freedom of speech pretty quickly here.
Well, I disagree with that on the Asians. Asians love America in a lot of ways.
They don't really love whites that much. I mean, they're nice, but go ahead. I interrupted you. We got to end. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Last words.
I think that the vast majority, like Nigerians, are the biggest, most successful immigrants of any kind. Very strange. People who immigrate to America, mostly using legal meritocratic immigration, love the American system. They are huge fans, and they do very successful economically and promote America and say it's the greatest thing ever, even though they do have some complaints about racism or whatever. They still really love America. That's why they're here.
They like America. They like the benefits that they're getting from America, but they don't believe in the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, Christianity, which I think you don't really like either.
I don't either.
Like they tend to dismiss and think that the white conservatives are racist and stuff like that, when it's the problem is that they themselves, they have a bad attitude. But man, go ahead.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Last word.
Last word, I think that it's okay to disagree with things if you think there's a better system that has some kind of scientific evidential basis that it's better. So like Australia banned guns. They have significantly less gun violence. There's perfectly rational to think that we should ban guns because we've seen it happen and it works. And so if you have some kind of evidence that here's a system that has been done by other people and it works better, it's rational to disagree with the American system if there's a way that's has good reasons to think it could work better.
At TJump_ on Twitter, guys, and TJump is the YouTube channel. And tell people how else they can find you, and if they want to talk to you, how you would recommend it.
Yeah, sure. My primary source of engagement is youtube.com/TJump. I'm a YouTuber. I debate people like Hake and professors and other people and flat earthers. Contact me there. Business inquiries, tejump@comcast.net. Thanks again for having me on. Really appreciate it. Enjoy talking to you as always. You're a really nice guy, even though you get a very bad rep.
I appreciate it, TJump. It's great talking to you as well.